thought. And ladies and gentlemen, now I think I'll request Mr. Vijay Kranti, who has a very special contribution from the Indian side in upholding and furthering the Tibetan cause. He has not only been very close to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, wrote a book on him, but has been very closely monitoring and has been contributing in a major way to the Tibetan cause. May I request Mr. Vijay Kranti?
Thank you, Dawalji. You know, it's a bit embarrassment to speak in presence of such scholars and in personal presence of His Holiness Karma Paji. And at a stage when many learned speakers have already expressed their views, I have very little to contribute. So maybe I'll take 3-4 minutes to say what I believe I can say in addition to what has been said. This book, I believe, as an observer of Tibetan issue, is a very significant book which has come at a very right time. This book has come at a time when history is taking shape very fastly inside Tibet and about Tibet. On one hand, the People's Republic of China, they are in what you call overdrive right now to have a final solution to the Tibetan question by dumping millions and millions of Han Chinese into Tibet, by converting the Tibetan people in their own country into a meaningless minority, which they have already done with many of those whom they call sister nationalities. Like they have done it to Manchurians, they have done it to Mongols in occupied Mongolian area. They are very much doing it in Xinjiang to the Muslims, Uyghurs, whose country used to be East Turkestan when Mao took over the reins in China. China is going in overdrive, and unfortunately the rest of the world, including those so-called friends of Tibet, those countries who claim that they are friends of Tibet, if I use a very unfortunate term, they are at the best spectators of a rape ceremony. Their role is nowhere beyond lip service to people of Tibet, to culture of Tibet, to the national existence of Tibet. And unfortunately, India, who has been more affected than the Tibetan people themselves by occupation of Tibet, I underline it, and I mean it. Many of my senior friends who understand, we have Admiral Nair, we have General Saab, they understand it far more than me or many of us, that occupation of Tibet has affected India's interest more than it has affected the interests of Tibetan people themselves. And unfortunately, we in India, and especially when I say we in India, I mean our governments, subsequent governments, successive governments, they have only demonstrated a sense of inertia, no action, just observers, passive observers. Unfortunately, India cannot afford this state of inertia. Just by sitting pretty, we can neither do justice to the Tibetan situation, and more than that, we are not doing justice to our own situation, to our own national interests. China is busy in finding a permanent solution to Tibet, and unfortunately this is going to be, if I quote one of the most learned and leading Tibetan scholars, it may be the end of problem for China, it may be the end of Tibet, but it will be the beginning of problems for China. We have to realize that. Many of us have complaints. We feel unhappy, some of us oppose that His Holiness Dalai Lama has gone to the extent of accepting autonomy within the Chinese constitution. Those who are critics from outside, inside Tibetans, they have other reasons. I think we first be ashamed when we criticize it, because it is mainly because of our inertia. It is because of the indifference on the part of India, who was the greatest hope for Tibetans, because of indifference on the part of the best of so-called friends of Tibet, and indifference on the part of United Nations, that His Holiness and his colleagues and Tibetans have been reduced to a very helpless situation where very unhappily they don't find another way to preserving Tibetan identity than what some of my friends would call total surrender, to accept Tibet within the Chinese constitution as a part of China. So this, I think, it reflects less of weakness on the part of His Holiness or Tibetans. It reflects a very shameful conduct on all of us who sit pretty on the other side of the fence. Now, some of my friends, they have raised question, what can we do? Ambassador Prabhat Shukla raised the issue that General Assembly in United Nations, that is still an option. We can restart with that, and the entire world community is within its moral and legal and political rights to raise that issue again. I would suggest that there are a few other practical ways, very practical, may sound very small, which we can do. One is, China is every day threatening India on Arunachal Pradesh, on many areas of Ladakh, on many areas in our middle sector. Why not we tell China in very simple words, sir, your claims are based on the mere assumption that Tibet is part of Tibet is part of China, and the reality is that Tibet is under illegal occupation of China. You cannot make Tibet as the base of claims over the third countries, making Tibet as the base. So I think it is within the rights of Indian government, within the political wisdom of our system, that we should tell China, the moment they raise question on Arunachal, that you are in illegal occupation of Tibet, so your claims on Arunachal stand nowhere. That is one where we will be fighting for our cause, and we are presenting Tibet's case more powerfully than ever we have done or anybody has done. The other is, His Holiness the Dalai Lama has been, as I said earlier, has been pushed into a situation to get into a dialogue which has reached nowhere. Chinese have simply fooled Tibetan people by continuing dialogue for 30 years, not reaching, not moving 1 inch, and at the end, I used this time to do everything they wanted to do in Tibet. They have now Tibet fully under their control. I don't want to go into those details. They have brought in millions of Hans inside. They have had their railway link. They have had their all roadways, the airfields, etc. And they had even Olympics. So, in this dialogue, I think the world can play a role by realizing that dialogue between Dharamsala and Beijing is an unequal dialogue. And there are many, many other stakeholders. India is one, Nepal is another, Bhutan is one, Myanmar is there. So these stakeholders also have a point. So at least these stakeholders should join that process of dialogue, which will strengthen not only the position of His Holiness Dalai Lama, it will someday look after the interests of these countries, which otherwise would be lost forever, which otherwise would be overwhelmed if the unequal dialogue succeeds between Dharamsala and Beijing. And the last, which is again a very practical thing, I believe, this country has been showing so much respect for its own friends like Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, Mother Teresa, whom we believe are the greatest moral assets of Indian thought process. Why we forget that we have Dalai Lama also here? He also deserves to be Bharat Ratna, like Mother Teresa, like Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan. This will not only correct one of our mistakes, it will send a very clear socio-political message to China also. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I have a very special word for Vikas Arya, who is publisher of owning the Aryan Books International, so is the publisher of this book, who has done a very, very painstaking work. Spent a lot of long hours there and has done a commendable job in bringing out this work. And I think as you see the book, you will find the good job done by him. May I request him for the vote of thanks?
Dear friends, it was indeed a stimulating and thought-provoking discussion. At the outset, I take this opportunity to thank His Holiness for so kindly releasing the volume. Thank you, sir, indeed, for your kind gesture and encouraging words. It is a proud privilege for us at Aryan Books to have taken this publication in association with Vivekananda International Foundation. I must thank Shri Ajit Dovalji, the director, for inspiring guidance. I am grateful to Ambassador Prabhat Shuklaji for conceiving and meticulously executing the volume. I am also grateful to Shri Vijay Krantiji for his graceful presence and views. I must also thank Ms. Anupama Ganguly and her colleagues at PIF for their kind cooperation. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for your presence. We now request you to join us for a cup of tea. Thank you.
We conclude as a convention in the Vivekananda Foundation with a very short Shanti mantra. So I'll ask you indulgence for another couple of seconds.
Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukhabhat bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Your Holiness. Glad you could spare me. Thank you. So it's not that anyway we choose, we can do that. Number one.
Is it possible on 20?
Thank you.